What a hit song is for Dua Lipa is very different than a Bryson Tiller hit song. People say that melody is king. I'll usually do 2 or 3 takes. Sometimes, though, it was just a freestyle. Now we start to talk about the audience. I like to start off with the verse by setting up the story. Where is this artist from? You gotta think about the fans of those genres. I could get as specific as the exact street. It's more than just the emotions. It's also doing a little bit of research. People say that melody is king, and I absolutely agree with that. You can have one melody, and you can make it sound completely different ways. Like, if I just make up something like, bum, 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 right? Just that melody. Let's say I want it to be a empowering song. We're probably gonna go somewhere in this tempo, right? Right? But imagine if I wanted to be a ballad. It would be very different. Da, 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 da. That's a very different emotion and feeling, and it's based off of the inflections that you decide to do. It could be you can now take that melody and put it in 3/4 if you want to. Now we're gonna have a little waltz. Da, 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 da. And that's a different feeling as well. So what you can do with a melody can also be a million different genres. So you see that in like you can have one simple melody and you can make it a great melody anyway. It can be a country song, it can be a pop song, it can be a jazz, it can be any of those different things. Now, when you start to go into things outside that are maybe a little bit more, sophisticated in choices. And I don't mean sophistication in this one is hard and this one is easy. I mean it in nuance. So a jazz version of that would be very, very, a jazz instrumentalist and an artist would approach the whatever inversions of that melody that they want to do with the chords, very different than somebody in pop world, which they love like a 1-3-5, a very simple, cyclical with the same 4 chords. You'll see that very often with pop music and country music. You'll see kind of the same 2 chords if you think about something like bachata or something like that. They might go back and forth between the same 2 chords because it goes into the rhythm very well. And then, of course, we're just talking in general, right? So not every song or every pop song or whatever does that. But it's just to give you an idea of how your structure, your tempo, how complicated the chord are. Are we doing a very simple chord? Are we adding, incidentals? Are we having a 7th? How complicated do we want to make these chord structures is going to depend also, again, on the genre that you're doing, because you got to think about the fans of those genres. Somebody who listens to jazz might not listen to the same things as somebody who listens to, rap. So, in those different fans, and that's also why I like to differentiate. A hit song for this person is very different than a hit song for this person. What a hit song is for Dua Lipa and that fan base is very different than a Bryson Tiller hit song or a Summer Walker hit song. And sometimes we forget that, because their fan base is what they feel a hit song is different. A SZA hit song is very different than a Lizzo hit song, but they exist in the same world of hits, you know what I mean? And so when we're thinking about where do we want to go? Now we start to talk about the audience a little bit more, because it's something that matters when you start to think about what tempo are we in, what time signature. If you're thinking about a particular artist, what key do we need to be in? What's the range of this artist? I usually like to, if I'm writing for somebody else, I'll listen to a few songs and I'll hit the lowest note and the highest note of what their usual top maybe 5 or 6 songs are, so that I can get an idea of What is their range? But again, I do those things and I go very deep into that because, I'm a musician in that type of way. And it really helps to tell me a lot about where am I going to begin here. I think that songwriting is one of the things that actually makes me believe in something bigger than me. I know that there's other things that are bigger than me in this world, right? But when I think about how a melody comes to me and I imagine, how do I know what that next note is going to be? Because I always know what that next note is going to be. Where does that come from? Does it come from just the experience of hearing millions of songs? Is it a gift? Is it, that's such a philosophical question and thought process. And I think about it often actually, because every time I imagine, coming up with a song it honestly makes me emotional because I don't know where it comes from. I just know how to channel it and how to lead. It gives me chills to just think about though. So when I'm looking for a melody, a lot of the times I just blurt out whatever feels right, because whatever feels right is going to be it, and I'll usually do 2 or 3 takes. Sometimes though, like Alicia Keys' song In Common, it was just a freestyle. That's just what it was. I had 30 minutes before I heading to Vegas that day, and that was the song. And me and El Angelo just got together and did that. So a song can also just be, maybe the first take is it. I usually know though, it's just a feeling. Sometimes you'll do a take and maybe you're like, oh, I like this hook, but we got to still find that verse melody. Okay, let's go do another one. And maybe it's, okay, I like this. Maybe it's a post. Let's do another one until we find each part. A lot of the times you'll be looking for your verse. You'll be looking for your pre. You'll be looking for your hook. And you'll be looking for your or a post. Or maybe even a bridge. But those things are very interchangeable. So when I'm trying to, decide, those are just things that I'm thinking about. My typical process for writing lyrics is starting off with just conversation. If I'm with somebody, I'm just like, how's your day today? Who are we loving? Who are we hating right now? What are we getting into? What are you doing later today? Starting those conversations. And sometimes it's like, we're spilling tea. It's, man, who broke your heart today? Or who pissed you off today? Any of those types of conversations, because you're gonna end up having a real conversation, then that's where it's going to lead you. But outside of the conversation, I usually like to start from the beginning of the story, right? Sometimes I'll just have a hook and that's just what it is, and that's where we start off. However, I usually like to start off with the verse because I want to know how much information do I need to give away in this hook, and where are we going melodically, and all of those different things. So I like to start by setting up the story and introducing the audience to, this is what this song is going to be about. These are the people, or this is the person. And then I build out that storyline from there, just like what you would do with any story. I think the balance between finding relatable lyrics, like of just being like, okay, this is going to be very specific to one group of people, versus being like, let's just write the most general song that could go to anybody. Depends on who you're writing for, because like I said, a hit song for one artist is very different than it is for another artist. And also their audiences are different. So that you can tell just by the demographic, that, if we go back to like Summer Walker, for example, that a lot of people in the South are going to listen to it. Like, where is this artist from? Right? So do we want to be specific on that? Like, is it, you're talking about Beyonce and that she's from Texas, and you have to decide who you're writing for, because that's going to tell you who your target audience is. So thinking about, where is this person from, or yourself, where do they tend to have success Billboard-wise or streaming-wise, what kind of playlist, all of those different ideas, because then you start to get an idea of what their fan base expects from them and also what they expect from this artist. Once you can understand the relationship between the two, then you understand, okay, does let's say Metro Boomin, does his audience, do a lot of them know what this is and this is and this is? Is this the lifestyle, or are people listening to them to escape and to get a peek into a particular lifestyle? There's so many different intentions of a fan that you have to keep that in mind when you're choosing how specific and not specific to be. So if I'm talking about a artist that is from Texas, right? Now, depending on where their fan base is, I could get as specific as the exact street that everybody in this town knows about, this exact street, right? Like in Atlanta, it would be something like Peachtree. Now, you hear that in references by an artist like Usher, right? So very, very, and that's in Atlanta. And, obviously they have it in a lot of different places, but what gives reference to the audience, what gives a little point of reference for the audience is understanding that, oh, well, this artist is from this place. They're probably talking about this specific Peachtree and this specific time. So, all of those different things, and that's why it's more than just the emotions. It's also doing a little bit of research when you start to go into the writing for other people or writing for yourself. You have to think about how the fans are going to receive it and how you can best paint that picture, and what kind of fan base they have. I think that great lyrics reinforce what the melody is telling you. Great lyrics reinforce the emotion and the storyline. And great lyrics, sometimes it just depends on the song. So a great lyric in a dance song, you're giving me directions. You're telling me to move. You're telling me to do something, right? A great lyric in a love song is one that could break your heart. A great lyric, in an empowering song is one that makes you feel confident. So a great lyric is based off of being intentional. And you can be intentional, with, after you find those melodies, or maybe it's before you find the melodies, depending on whatever your way of going about it is. But yeah, a great lyric just gets the point across. And it doesn't mean to overwrite it, which is very possible. Sometimes a great lyric is the most simple thing that you can, or the most simple way that you can say it. There's a few different songs that remind me specifically of either where I was when I wrote them, or what kind of space I was in. So one song is called Accelerate, and it's by Christina Aguilera, and I wrote it in New York. And I was at the at the High Line, and I was at a party, and it was around Fashion Week, and you can hear it in the lyrics. I'm saying, just got back to the hotel, and I mentioned the High Line, and I mentioned, where I'm at. So there's that, and you can tell in that same album, Pipe, which is also another thing that's okay, just being in New York and doing those other things. Same thing with, let me see, being in Miami and writing, Latin music. That's also another thing of being okay, I'm at this particular place, or maybe I was in Basel. So there's a lot of different ways for me, because music for me is my time machine. It's my kind of my postcards to myself, in the way that I use songs that I've written to remember where I was in life at that point. Or, there's a lot of different ways. So yeah, lyrically, you definitely have moments, throughout my catalog where you can tell either how old I was, because of my writing style, or, I used to be very, very in my female anthem bag early on in my career. And I wrote very sassy. It was such a direct reflection of my personality at the time. And so yeah, each song or each album or 5 years of my career has moments for me that I think about and I'm like, oh, it's because I wrote it here or with this person or was experiencing this at the time.